Please rise for the Heart of Wisdom Sutra service. This morning, directly after chanting the service, we'll go right into the memorial for Matsuo Roshi. The handouts are over there with Joseph. He will hand those out to Kushin or Kunin for the others. The merit of today's service is dedicated to those still suffering from COVID virus, as well as in loving memory of Carol Joan Faulkner and Marcella Cameron Aldridge. All my past and harmful karma, born from meaningless greed, hate, and delusion, through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. All my past and harmful karma, born from meaningless greed, hate, and delusion, through body, speech, and mind, I now all my past and harmful karma, born from the beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, through body, speech, and mind, I now fully allow. I take refuge in Buddha. I take refuge in Dharma. I take refuge in Sangha. I take refuge in Buddha, the fully awakened one. I take refuge in Dharma, the compassionate teaching. I take refuge in Sangha, the harmonious community. I have completely taken refuge in Buddha. I have completely taken refuge in Dharma. I have completely taken refuge in Sangha.
realize the way. All of us throughout space and time, all under ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom. Please distribute the chant books for the founders memorial. Those online, please turn to the chant book. We begin with the in memoriam.
You want standing or sitting?
Standing. Yes. It's not too long. It's safe to remove the mask so everybody can hear. In memoriam. In all directions, endowed with great compassion, endowed with love, affording protection to sentient beings, consent through the power of your great compassion to come forth, O compassionate ones, you possess the wisdom of understanding, the love of compassion, the power of projecting incomprehensible measures of authority. I will show you are passing from this world to the next. The light of this world has faded for you. You have entered solitude with your karmic forces. You have gone into a vast silence. You are borne away by the great ocean of birth and death. O compassionate one, project I will show who is defenseless, be like a mother and father. O compassionate ones, let not the force of your compassion be weak, but aid and comfort our loved ones. Forget not your ancient vows. Now the Busarai, a little instruction on the Busarai. It's done without accompaniment. I will establish the cadence, and we will follow that with the names of the female ancestors. After each name, in the beginning, Hibashi Butsu Daiyosho. Butsu Daiyosho means Buddha and great authentic teacher. After Shakyamuni, we only say Daiyosho after Makakasho Daiyosho through the list. Then Sangaku Soyu is chanted 3 times at the end. Throughout the recitation of the Busarai, which are the names of Buddhas and ancestors, the gong will be struck periodically, and at that time, it's customary to bow. Prostration bow or standing bows are always proper. Then in the women's and ancestors, we chant acharya before the name rather than chanting Daiyosho after. So it's acharya mahapajapati, acharya mita, and so forth. But likewise, with each striking of the gong, it's customary to do a bow. Sorai. Devashi Butsu Daio Sho, Shiki Butsu Daio Sho, Ishaku Butsu Daio Sho, Kuruson Butsu Daio Sho, Kunokon Muni Butsu Daio Sho, Kasho Butsu Daio Sho, Shakyamuni Butsu Daio Sho, Akasho Daio Sho, Ananda Daio Sho, Shono Ashu Daio Sho, Uvaki Gutta Daio Sho, Dai Kaka Daio Sho, Vishaka Daio Sho, Ashurita Daio Sho, Utsunanda Daio Sho, Uramita Daio Sho, Parashiva Daio Sho, Punyayasha Daio Sho, Anamote Daio Sho, Amimora Daio Sho, Nagarjuna Daio Sho, Kanadaiva Daio Sho, Ragoraka Daio Sho, Sogyananda Daio Sho, Kaya Shata Daio Sho, Umorata Daio Sho, Shayata Daio Sho, Ashupanzu Daio Sho, Mandura Daio Sho, Arapuna Daio Sho, Shishi Bodai Daio Sho, Ashashita Daio Sho, Punyomita Daio Sho, Anyahara Daio Sho, Daio Daio Aiso Eka Daio Sho, Kanchi So San Daio Sho, Dai Yoshin Daio Sho, Diamond Golden Daio Sho, Diamond no Daio Sho, Seigan Yoshi Daio Sho, Seito Isen Daio Sho, Yasani Daio Sho, Ungan Daio Sho, Osan Rokai Daio Sho, Ungo Doyo Daio Sho, Doando Hi Daio Sho, Doan Kanchi Daio Sho, Yosan Kan Daio Sho, Tayo Gyogin Daio Sho, Toshi Gisei Daio Sho, Uyo Dokai Daio Sho, Tankashi Jun Daio Sho, Choro Seiryo Daio Sho, Tendo Soka Daio Sho, Seisho Chikan Daio Sho, Tendo Myojo Daio Sho, Eikei Dogin Daio Sho, Kogen Rejo Daio Sho, Tetsugi Kai Daio Sho, Heisan Jokin Daio Sho, Gasan Josei Daio Sho, Tsugen Jakure Daio Sho, Seisho Sunryo Daio Sho, Chikyo Shoryu Daio Sho, Daisan Donne Daio Sho, Kishi Ban Daio Sho, Dian Triki Daio Sho, Ishu Jushin Daio Sho, Shunrei Shito Daio Sho, Unan Joryu Daio Sho, Yushis Chikyu Daio Sho, Yoshis Suijak Daio Sho, Kaio Genkyo Daio Sho, Ryuan Eshu Daio Sho, Daishin Choyu Daio Sho, Kano Tsunto Daio Sho, Ruzan Shuron Daio Sho, Chikurin Kai Daiyosho, Chiko Shorin Daiyosho, Renbasho Hen Daiyosho, Tetsuyo Daiyosho, Rocho Tatsudaiyosho, Anzangyo Daiyosho, Chikyo Shuzan Daiyosho, Hiro Gikan Daiyosho, Onkoji Sendaiyosho, Chodai Daiyosho, Shoshu Gendo Daiyosho, Ryozan Minto Daiyosho, Ito Kanko Daiyosho, Gente Kanyu Daiyosho, Nano Suyo Daiyosho, Bukai Sentoi Daiyosho, and to all the great women teachers, known and unknown, remember through these names. Acharya Mahajapati, Acharya Mita, Acharya Yasodhara, Acharya Kisa, Acharya Sujata, Acharya Sundarinanda, Acharya Bharisi, Acharya Bhattacharya, Acharya Visakha, Acharya Shingakamata, Acharya Kema, Acharya Uttalavanna, Acharya Sambhavati, Acharya Uttaraka, Acharya Chanda, Acharya Uttama, Acharya Bhadda, Acharya Kundalakesa, Acharya Nandutara, Acharya Dantika, Acharya Sakura, Acharya Sina, Acharya Dhammadina, Acharya Kisagotami, Acharya Uberi, Acharya Isadasi, Acharya Vadakarapalani, Acharya Bhuta, Acharya Samana, Acharya Dhamma, Acharya Chita, Acharya Anopama, Acharya Sukha, Acharya Samma, Acharya Uttalavanna, Acharya Srimala Devi, Acharya Konchi, Acharya Lingao, Acharya Moshanyaran, Acharya Yutiemo, Acharya Myoshin, Acharya Darshan, Acharya Shiji, Acharya Jihan, Acharya Viman, Acharya Tongchi Dharan, Acharya Yudao, Acharya Vivan, Acharya Padam, Acharya Wunjao, Acharya Myodao, Acharya Jitwam, Acharya Zenshin, Acharya Zenso, Acharya Ezen, Acharya Gronen, Acharya Edi, Acharya Shoga, Acharya Ekan, Acharya Shodan, Acharya Mokru Sonnen, Acharya Myosho Enkan, Acharya Egiru, Acharya Eshun, Acharya Shoshin, Acharya Suitsu, Acharya Chiono. And now we chant the Kama Sutra. We chant the English and then the Japanese, or the Chinese, Sino-Japanese, and again the English, Sino-Japanese, 7 times all told. Kanon this ends the ceremony. Please remember these Buddha ancestors, they were all real people, just like you and I. So, Fusatsu, if you will take over.
Sangaku, we'll get started. We're going to have some lineage readings for Matsuoka Roshi. We'll transition the Zendo from one to the other. Just give us about 5 minutes and then we'll get set. Sensei Zenku, you're on first, so I'll give you a heads up. Thank you, everyone. We'll convene shortly.
So I think the same chair setup that Shin.
Testing. Testing. Almost ready, folks. Sensei Zenku? We're good if you're good.
Just wanted to offer a program note if anybody wants one of these Founders Memorial Service handouts, which has those chants in them, please contact me by email and I'll get you one.
Sensei Zenku, say something for me.
Fusatsu, are we all ready to go?
Yes, ready to go, sir. Go, Sensei.
I can barely.
Sorry. Yeah, we are ready to go when you are to kick it off.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, good. Welcome, everybody. Really good to see you this morning. Welcome to our STO Founder Special Service. And, this morning we are honoring and we are expressing deep gratitude for our ancestors and especially our founder, Matsuo Kuroshi. So there's a few of us are going to speak this morning. I'm going to start. I'm Zenku. Sangaku from Falmouth is going to make a few comments, and then Hojo Sensei, Taiyun Roshi will also have some more extensive comments to make. I wanted to just say a few things. I think most of you know a fair amount about Matsuo Kuroshi, but we have wonderful stories that we want to keep sharing. And so I'll share a few of those. We've sort of selected November as our Founders Month. It just turns out that Matsuo Kuroshi was born on November 25th, 1912, near Hiroshima in Japan, in the inland sea of Japan, again, not too far from Hiroshima. And he died 85 years later on November 20th, 1997 in Chicago. And Chicago was obviously where he founded the first, let me say it this way first. I think to give a sketch of Matsuo Kuroshi's life, he was born and he was born into a Zen family. 600 years of tradition of Zen priests in Matsuo Kuroshi's family preceded him. And he went on to Kamazawa University, which is a prominent Buddhist university. And then he studied Zen intensely at Sojiji Monastery. And this sort of prepared him. He did some missionary work in northern Japan, but his real life's work started in 1940. He was asked by Soto Zen headquarters to come to the United States and help the Japanese community in the US, which is what he did. He knew some English. He had studied English earlier, and he mostly was on the West Coast in the early going in 1940. And as we all know, in 1941, the United States entered World War II after Pearl Harbor, and all the Japanese were rounded up, put in internment camps, and Matsuoka Roshi was brought to Colorado. Ultimately, his skill and his education, his knowledge of English and Japanese was found to be very useful, and he served the United States in the capacity of translating. So he was sort of released out of the internment situation earlier than some. But in 1945, he went to Chicago, and this is where he began his real life's work of establishing a Soto Zen headquarters in Chicago that was related and in correspondence with Japan, Soto Shu in Japan. And it was really interesting. If you look at it, it was founded in 1949. So, but the 50s, we can think of the 50s as primarily being a time when Matsuoka Roshi was very much helping the Japanese community recover from the internment situation, helping them reestablish their society and their community in Chicago. And so this was what was happening during the 50s. Mostly Japanese people coming to the temple and that kind of thing. Toward the end of the 50s and at the very beginning of the 60s, Americans, Caucasian Americans began coming. You know, people were very interested in Eastern religion. They started coming to the temple. My first teacher, Kongo Roshi, was one of those. He was one of the first to study under Matsuoka Roshi. And Kongo Roshi was very influential in helping Matsuoka Roshi figure out the best way to teach, share Buddha's wisdom and meditation practice, Zazen practice with Americans. We had a conversation with Akiba Roshi, who lives in Oakland. He is currently the Bishop of North America, a Soto Shu representative from Japan. And he said that as far as his understanding, Matsuoka Roshi was the very first Japanese Zen priest to teach Zazen, to teach Zen meditation to Americans. So, you know, we talk about Matsuoka Roshi as being a pioneer. And I think this is one of his, the validity of that, the validation of that is his early work in actually allowing people to practice and teaching people how to practice. It's one thing to learn about philosophy. It's another to, as we know, let go of the thinking mind and deeply practice meditation. So anyway, I just wanted to give a little bit of that. He left Chicago and put Kongo Roshi in charge in 1970. He went to Long Beach and had a couple of decades in Long Beach. He would keep coming back and to Chicago, and I got to know him on many of his trips coming back to Chicago. I became a disciple of Kongo Roshi in '76 and got to know him for 2 or 3 decades before his passing through a number of visits. So anyway, I just wanted to give a general sketch of that. He came back to Chicago in the mid-90s when his health began to fail. He had a few seizures and he came back to Chicago so that we could help take care of him. And then he passed in 1999. But anyway, I want to tell you a few of my favorite stories, and then I want to pass it on to the others who have a few comments to make. A few of my favorite stories, you may have heard of it, but I'll I think I don't ever get tired of hearing them. So let me just share with you. Most of these stories are related to questions that students have. And maybe they're after Zazen. We would go in the back room at the temple and we would have question and answer with a cup of tea. So one time he was asked by a student, what is the purpose of Zen practice? You know, a very basic question. You know, what is the purpose of Zen practice? And so he thought for a moment, and you know, there's so many things you could say about it. What's it good for? But he succinctly and just simply said, confidence in everyday life. You know, as we let go of our frustrations, as we let go of our self-doubts, as we let go of our self-clinging, our innate confidence emerges. You know, we've all experienced this through our practice. Another wonderful story is he was once also asked about progress. How do I know if I'm making progress in Zen? You know, and so this is a pretty un-Zen question because we don't really want to look at, am I making progress or not? But he was asked this nonetheless, and he thought for a moment, and he said, sitting, mountain, feeling. So, you know, when we sit in our Zazen, we let go of body and mind, we let go of the thinking mind, we settle into the Tanden, our meditation, and more, we feel like a mountain. This was Matsuoka Roshi's reply. He also said once that Zen is a straight line which points back to yourself. And I think it really echoes Dogen's words about Zen. Buddhism is self-study. So it's always about studying the self, paying attention. And one of the fondest things that I think he said was, he would always remind us that, remember, always your Buddha nature is shining within you. You know, your Buddha nature is always shining. And so for us to get out of the way and allow this to reveal itself, this is our practice. But I found Matsuoka Roshi a very warm, kind person who was very interested in helping Zen students. And one of my takeaways, he really liked the phrase Nichi Nichi Koreko Jitsu, which is every day is a fortunate day. You know, every day is a good day, no matter what happens. And through this and through other things that he would teach, you know, he was always trying to help you understand that no matter what happens to us in life, this is our Zen practice. We are to take care of it. You know, we have no idea what might happen to us in the future. All we can do is put our full effort into taking care of it, learning from it, and you know, and moving on. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you this morning. I'm so glad we could be together for this. And I would very much like to turn it over to Sangaku for some of his comments. Please take it away.
Gasho Senku. I'm Unshin Sangaku Dan Joslyn, and I am the practice leader and priest at the Falmouth Soto Zen Sangha. I never met Matsuoka Roshi. I never met Sakyamuni Buddha. I have met Taiyun Elliston Roshi. Therefore, I've met all three. Matsuoka Roshi wrote that when we actually are in the presence of someone, we're in the presence of the process or the dynamics of that person, not a form, not a fixture, but a kind of unfolding of everything that is of that person. So 25 years apart, 2,500 years apart. Sakyamuni Buddha, Soyu Matsuroka Roshi. Matsuroka Roshi is our near ancestor. He is our near ancestor. There are many people who knew him. In that regard, they are of him. He is of them. And it extends our concept of lineage and ancestry. By looking at my teacher, I see all of the teachers. By hearing the names that were recited this morning, both lineage and ancestors, both men and women, I experience them. If ever so fleeting, it is still a sense, an experiential feeling that I have as part of this 2,500-year-old lineage and ancestry. We speak of teachers in many ways in Buddhism and in Zen. We talk about a teacher as someone who is unrelenting, not in trying to make you learn, but in pointing their finger at things that are important from their perspective. So teachers are not drill sergeants. They are finger pointers and shouters and almost perfect saying beings. That is what they do. We have the fortune of living our life at a time where these teachings are most important. These understandings, this sharing of the Dharma that is so essential in our way of life as practitioners. We practice Matsuoka Roshi. We practice Sakyamuni Buddha. We practice Mahakashasapati. We practice. Because they practice, we practice. Because we practice, everyone is practicing. To understand our lineage and ancestry, it is to understand that we are they and they are we. Not of hair's difference in that regard. I actually revel in listening to Taiyun Roshi talk about Matsuoka Roshi. I smile. I looked at the 1986 film of his receiving ordination, Matsuoka Roshi talking about Hanamatsuri, talking about the lineage, talking about the importance of us all being in this together, one being good to another, the harmony of the Sangha. Some weeks ago, I prepared a short Dharma notes on Matsuoka Roshi, likening him to a bridge builder, which Taiyun Elliston Roshi has mentioned many times. Habe Wase, bridge builder, spanner, connector, sharer. That bridge building is what we do every day in our lineage. We offer the Dharma. Sometimes it is accepted, sometimes not. Sometimes the link is made, sometimes not. Even if it takes 100,000 million kalpas, all of the ancestors and lineage holders are helping us do that. I revel in the fact also that in discussing teachers, I get to respond to my teacher, my Dharma brothers and sisters, members of our Sangha. So if I were to encapsulate all of this in a few words, it would be, we're lucky ducks, aren't we? We're lucky ducks to have this lineage, this ancestry, living Buddhism, living the practice of knowing ourselves, And we can always go back and look at the stories and retell the stories. And in that way, we meet, don't we, the essence of the ones who came before us. Therefore, what better thing for us to do than not only to celebrate that, but to live it each day in our practice. That is really our livelihood.
Which brings up a basic koan. What is an actual lucky duck?
You,
What,
me,
what makes, I mean, a real duck, what makes one duck luckier than another?
because they're practicing being a duck out in the inhibitions, no shots being fired at them. A bird flies endlessly.
The lucky duck is the one that didn't get shot on the hunt, right? So I'm going to make this brief because we want to allow time for dialogue, which is the most important thing. Matsuoka Roshi would often say, well, not often, but I went there one time. He said, we teach each other Buddhism, so we don't want to overdo the teacher-student thing too much. It's like teaching music or anything else. Your teacher can teach you something. They can teach you method, they can teach you attitude, etc., but they can't teach you Zen any more than anybody can teach you music or art. You have to discover that yourself. But a good teacher gets out of the way. And I think that's what he meant by we teach each other Buddhism. You know, I certainly can testify that I've learned more about Zen from my students than they have learned about Zen from me over the years, for sure. But with that caveat, I wanted to say that in 1997, when Matsuoka Roshi died, I went to Chicago and attended his memorial service. And when I came back, we did the first memorial service here for Matsuoka Roshi when we were over on McClendon Avenue in Little Five Points in Atlanta. And pulling the file out for today's ceremony, I came across the handout that we used at that time, Founders Memorial Service, November 30th, 1997. So that's how long we've been doing this memorial service every year. And at that time, I had pulled a quotation to read, and I think I'll just read that. This takes us back. 97, how many years is that? It's, you do the math. Do the math.
23.
So this is called a remembrance dedication, and it's a quotation from An Introduction to Zen, which those of you who've read the Mokurai or Kiyosaku may have come across this particular talk that we published, his collected talks. So this is Matsuoka Roshi. Emptiness is the same as the absolute, but it is important not to confuse this with a God. In Zen Buddhism, there is no God. Only there is the constant change of the universe and the law of cause and effect, which some theists would call God. In saying emptiness is the absolute, we mean that an experience of emptiness is to know the absolute reality of the universe and to know that everything is one. Objects are not distinguished between in their reality. One who has experienced this truth has entered nirvana or has become enlightened as a Buddha. In daily life, one is not hampered by anything, or such a one, we should say. One is free and yet abides by the utmost concern for the rights of others. When a person's mind becomes empty, an awareness of the oneness of all things enters into it and no longer is limited by thoughts of self. One then acts with a spontaneous freedom that is in complete harmony with the world of which one is a part. All one's power can be put into each task. Although one lives a daily life in this world, one does so as a Buddha. And of course, Buddha means awakened one. So Buddhism holds out this potential for all of us to wake up in this lifetime. By this time, you may be able to tell that in Soto Zen, we do not distinguish between this life we are presently living and a life after death. We do not separate our body and its consciousness, personality, or spirit. And we do not mention a, quote, soul. We are only concerned with how we live in this moment. Zen is not apart from life like a treatise or doctrine in an orthodox religion. The potential to be a Buddha and the power of Zen lies in each person to be discovered by meditation and faithful attention to the tasks of everyday life. Zen is an action with harmony, is action in harmony with the rhythm of the universe. Let me say that again. Zen is action in harmony with the rhythm of the universe. So it sounds like a manifestation of Taoism, you could say. Or Taoism become manifest in your life. In Zen, we believe that this truth can be found within ourselves. We do not put our faith in the Buddha because he is not a god, but rather a fine example. We do not rely on anything outside of ourselves. Now, he's talking about in the spiritual quest, the interconnectedness, the fact that the 52 labors that brought us this food and the meal chant, that's not the kind of reliance he's talking about. We do not rely on anything for this outside of ourselves. You certainly cannot rely on your teacher for your own enlightenment. So, Zen is seeking a world free of suffering in this life and not waiting until an afterlife. In Zen, we do not concern ourselves with life after death. We only believe in becoming Buddhas in this life. There are many Buddhas, and everyone has the potential within to become one. A Buddha is an awakened and enlightened one. So in closing, I would just like to give one personal anecdote where he says the potential, Zen is not apart from life, like a treatise or doctrine. The potential to be a Buddha and the power of Zen lies in each person to be discovered by meditation and faithful attention to the tasks of everyday life. So I was at the temple one day on a weekend cleaning, helping Matsuoka Roshi and maybe causing some resentment at home. But he had a little box of rags that he kept in the kitchen, and they were all cut to about 6 inches square. Very neat and orderly. And we would use those rags to clean. And as he was cleaning, he dropped a rag on the floor. And as he bent down, he said, "Very precious." I was the only one in the room, so nobody else could quote this particular comment. Very precious. So that struck me, and I had to think about what's so precious about, one of many 6-inch squares of cloth. So this stayed with me for a long time. And after he had moved to Long Beach in 1970, and I had moved to Atlanta in 1970, leaving Congo in charge of the temple in Chicago, one day I visited him, and several times, and he would come here, and so we'd go back and forth and meet in Chicago and so on throughout the ensuing years. And so I mentioned this incident to his students. We had a little discussion and about how remarkable it was, I thought. And he said he didn't remember it. So sometimes the way our teacher teaches us is nothing special to them. So Shinjin, I'd like to start with you and get your response to the three presentations.
Well, Matsuoka, I got here a year before he died, so I never met him. But you know, the time since that I've been here, I don't think there's anything we do that he doesn't touch, that he's not, you know, that he's not embodied by. And I don't think a day goes by here that he's not mentioned, which I think is, it makes the whole entire lineage somewhat more human. When the three of us that have went through who've gone through the brown robe ceremony, one of the things we have to do is we have to chant that lineage numerous times. And kind of to echo what Dan said is, you know, these were all actual people, and they all went through the same processes learning Zen that we did. There was a day that they showed up at the monastery for the very first time. There was a day, you know, that they met their teacher for the first time, and they got frustrated and bewildered and probably wanted to quit more times than they can count, just like we all have. And I think that that when we recite the lineage, that we have a lineage teacher so close to us in terms of somebody that brought Zen from Japan to America. I think that just makes it a lot more real and a lot more human.
So over to you, Fusatsu.
Yeah.
We have
Again,
three other people.
Yeah, folks in the room in the Zendo, and it's amazing to see all of your beautiful faces this morning. We have people on Facebook from Nashville. We have people from Montana. We have people all over. So this is the lineage in action. So we would love to hear from you. So if you're on Zoom, please come off of mute, ask your question, raise your hands, or in the Zendo, just ask questions. We welcome questions, and we want to hear from our lineage.
Also to questions of Zenku or whoever.
Yes, yes. If you have a specific question for one of our teachers, please speak their name. So I see Katsuri.
Good morning, everyone. I knew Matsuoka in Long Beach for a little over 10 years. And Sangaku, when you mentioned the finger pointing, he would point his finger if he really meant to make a point. But it was always very grandmotherly. He wanted to contact you and get your attention, and that was kind of his part of his style. It was very loving most of the time. Thank you.
Katsuri, this is Fusatsu from the Zendo. Can you speak a little bit about your personal experience, like how you met him, and just a little bit?
He was my first Buddhist teacher. I met him in March 1981 on a Saturday morning, and he taught me Zazen. And it was over the years, I really had the feeling that I was getting kind of the essence of Zen practice. We weren't really concerned about other centers or publishing anything, or we were just kind of concerned about practice. But the other thing I do want to say is, you know, like per this discussion, he would probably, because to him, the most important thing was Zazen, not him. So he would always make sure we'd come back to Zazen. And I am so grateful to the teachers here, Tayun, Roshi, and all the others for, you know, preserving his lineage. I can hear his teaching. It's here. So without the people on this call, we wouldn't be hearing it. So I'm very grateful.
Gotcha, thank you. Yes, Cushion.
Greetings from Montana, where it seems like since I have a wood stove burning behind me and there's fans in Atlanta, we may be experiencing a different reality right now. So nice that we're all in one room together, which I deeply appreciate. And thank you for our teachers for giving us such a lovely morning and consideration. Sangaku Sensei, when you were speaking of this ability to be connected through our teachers and others, I think of our universal transfer of merit that we chant in morning services, you know, all Buddhas throughout space and time. And I found it particularly moving to hear your words reminding us of the humanity that we span together, and then our chance to increase that to the universal connection. And I wondered if any of our teachers would like to just speak to that a little more. I just find that most powerful and supportive of our practice.
I particularly like what Sinjin said regarding the kind of the expansiveness of it. And I also go back to what Hojo said. We teach each other the Dharma was the first words I heard from him first time I did Dokusan. Well, maybe not the first one I can remember. I didn't hear much for a while, then I started to hear some things, which is another way of saying share the Dharma. Not particularly fond of paying forward as a concept because of the sad ending of the movie, but the point being that this is what we do. I think it is our livelihood. It might be right effort in the beginning because we are experiencing our practice, but I think it does become our livelihood. I think it becomes our way of life, which is our livelihood. Now, this is a long process that we go through, and recognizing this and sharing this is an incredible thing. And I'm feel very fortunate to be part of this lineage and have the same understanding that I can hear from Bill as he was speaking, or from anybody else. We seem to be saying something similar that has a lot of Masaroku Roshi overtones. So I'm appreciative.
Sangak, I would like to go back to your talk, if you would please. I was a Vajrayana practitioner for a long time, and I know if you haven't practiced, you probably don't know exactly what it means. But anyway, it's part of this thing that you talked about is being part of the lineage. Is the lineage flowing through you? For me, it's very difficult to read and to see things visually because of my personal impairment. But sometimes when I read things, it's like I pick up that feeling or that sensation. There's a line in Zazen Shin that does that, and some stuff out of Sandokai. And when I first started Zen, we were reading Mountains and Rivers. And the first poem in Mountains and Rivers just opened me up to Zen. So I have a very difficult time in the sense that I don't perceive it the same way. But could you address this thing about how the actual teachings or what I'm reading or chanting comes through that? And could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, my belief, my understanding these days is that the 10,000 things are 10,001. I mean, I'm one of the 10,000 things. And as long as I don't try to parse or develop a hierarchy of that, it seems that everything is teaching as well as sharing. And all of us, certainly for me, I find myself at different times being struck by what I hear, see, touch, smell, taste, or whatever I left out, see. So all of these are just striking the bell, the same tone. So yes, after talking with someone in the Sangha, I may then read something that just is overwhelmingly true of what we talked about. Or listening to Hojo this morning, reading that, 23-year-old memorial recognition of the statements of Masaru Roshi. So I think, all of us are different types of learners and different things affect us. So whether it's chanting, reading, sitting quietly, being in Dokusan, answering questions, all of these things just feel the experiential aspect of it, I think, is the harmony. So we don't play the same notes, or no, these are not the same notes, but it's harmonic in its wholeness, one bright pearl, as it were. So I'm just glad different people can strike different notes for me to, have a sensory awareness that I probably didn't have until they did that. And certainly everything that you said just offers us that opportunity.
This is with Zach. I have a note from John Lyles from Facebook. I think this is to Hojo Sensei. It's very precious. It's something that I still recall as a koan that you gave me to meditate upon. So very appreciative of that. That's just a comment off of Facebook. Any comment on that, Sensei?
Yeah, thank you, John. John is, if you want to look him up online, he's called Sax Fiend. He's a really mean saxophone player, amongst other things, and one of the early disciples here in Atlanta. And John was so talented. He was an actor. He was trained in various ways. I always thought he was a little too good at doing kinhin. You know what I mean? he was just perfect. So he's kind of a fast horse in that way. But the fact that John is still around after, it's got to be like 30, going on 40 years now, shows he's also a slow horse. Better to be a slow horse.
And if any of you were on last week, part of I think our lineage has evolved into having a musical side in art. So that's something that's expressing very strongly in our lineage. We have Sensei Shinjin, we have Blair on, who I've been pinging him like, oh, you're going to be playing music for us sometime soon. We have writers. So I think that's also a part of our richness of our lineage. So that's something that's continuing to express itself. So let me pause. Any questions from the Zendo or comments? We're good?
I had a comment to follow yours. The first time I got a recording of my musical setting of the Heart Sutra, I gave it to Sensei in Chicago, and he played it and listened to it. Later he said, "Oh, it's so beautiful, like Bing Crosby," which stopped my musical career for several years.
And David, I saw you had your
Yeah. So Gasho, and thank you so much for this wonderful remembrance and lineage. And I'll make a comment, and then hopefully it'll turn into a question that reflects what I'm pondering. But one of the things that strikes me about Matsuoka Roshi, and I obviously was far too young to have met him. I think I was born the same year that Taiyun Roshi moved to Atlanta. So, but he did seem like there was this iconoclastic aspect to his whole life. And I find it fascinating that the Soto Shu chose him to go to America. I mean, that to me is just, especially given how structured and rigid, Japanese Zen has become. And then also, my own experience hanging around in different Zen or Buddhist circles, just casually kind of on the periphery for a number of years now, is how easy it is for people to get either hung up or fascinated with, oh, I'm a member of such and such a lineage, or this going to the opposite extreme, this Buddhist without beliefs thing, this like, oh, I don't have any religious, any religious or, lineage affiliation. And one of the things that keeps me coming back and hanging around with this lineage is this rigorous attempt at trying to find that balance between this no lineage and then just this kind of religious dogmatic adherence to lineage that I see in a lot of even the Zen communities in the United States and especially in Japan. And so I just wanted to just bring that out as a point of observation and also a point of great appreciation and thanks to the senior teachers for that. And I'm interested in how y'all keep that balance between the two extremes.
Well, let me make one quick comment on that, and then I'm sure Zenku would have something to say about it as well. When it came time for me to formalize my credentials, Matsuoka Roshi took me aside one day back in the 70s and said, "You must become a Zen priest." He said, not for yourself, but so that others will listen to you. He said, "We live in a credentialed society. If you don't have credentials, nobody's going to listen." So he had that much confidence in me. And I said, "Oh, okay." And that's when we first started doing ceremonies. But then when he died, 1997, Zenku and I and Arthur Stovall, who some of you know from here, traveled to LA to meet with Akiba Roshi and to discuss, how do we get right with God here? And if we'd done anything when Matsuoka was alive, it would have been a little bit inappropriate, to take that up with anybody else, that subject. And but it became clear that for us to be recognized in a larger community, something had to be done. It happened that Okamura Roshi was there at the same time. So we met him and we went together and visited a Shin temple, which was installing a new mountain ceremony, a priest, the son of the priest who had run it before. So the upshot of that was that they thought they could help me because my records had been kept up in Japan. Congo's had not, and since both Congo and Zenku, you may recall this better than I do, because Congo and Matsuoka Roshi had both died. There was no way they could formally do anything about that. And afterwards, Barbara Cohn, who we met here and in Austin, Texas. She had students here. She said, "Well, we can work this out. Let's figure out something to do." She's from the Suzuki lineage. So she also knew Okamura, and we figured out that he could, they could do my formal ceremonies. And Okamura Roshi, when we were all in LA that time, he said, "Don't do anything to cut off the Matsuoka lineage." He said, "If you go to Japan and study under somebody else, and unless it's his nephew and so forth, or one of his family, it cuts off the Matsuoka lineage." So the lineages, as I get it, in Japan are very sort of promiscuously incestuous or something. They're all sort of woven together. And if you take over a temple, you give up your personal lineage and take on the lineage of the temple. So it's, we're not there. Fortunately, I hope in America we'll never be there. But we share the Okamura lineage, which is Kodo Sawaki, Uchiyama. Kodo Sawaki was teaching at Komazawa University when Matsuoka practiced there. So Kodo Sawaki was one of Matsuoka's teachers. And so, that's what I mean by incestuous. We're all one Dharma family. So we're very fortunate that Okamura decided to do my ceremonies because nobody can question his credentials. And so nobody can really question mine. And it applies to my students as well. Nobody can really question my students' credentials. So as long as we don't do anything too weird. So anyway, we live in the best of all worlds in the sense that we share the Uchiyama or Kodo Sawaki, Matsuoka lineages. And we have a dashed line to Suzuki through Seiri and Barbara Kahn. So Zenku, you might want to clarify some of that word salad I just threw out there. Or
Yeah,
put some dressing on it.
What I wanted to add to that is, no, I think this whole idea of, taking pride in your lineage or something in that direction, I think that's not appropriate. I mean, don't misunderstand me. I think what we need to do is show gratitude for our lineage. It's pride and, comparing one to the other. That is not, it's not beneficial. There's no help there. But I think what we're doing today is, showing gratitude. And I think that's a really important sentiment to embrace, on this day and with our ancestry. And, the other thing I would say is, the Shakyamuni Buddha said that when he was awakened, when he had his enlightenment experience on December 8th, 2,500 years ago, he said, all beings are simultaneously enlightened with me. And, it just gives you an image of how permeated we are, we are intertwined. And our lineage is a great example of that. We are intertwined with our ancestors, and we can see that, but we're intertwined with everything, Buddhist, non-Buddhist, Buddhist is just a label, as beings, as our innate true nature, we are, there's nothing that falls outside of it. This is the oneness of all things. And so I think a lot of what we're touching on today is really just echoing the interdependence of all things. And we should embrace this more, and be more accepting, show more gratitude. Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays. So that was a wonderful time to be grateful, and I think that gratefulness helps us be more open to a deeper understanding of this.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think one of the things that is really fun about the lineage in an odd way is you read through it, or you have to copy it down or write it out or something. And, there's all the names that you're really familiar with. There's the guys that there's, all the way back to the beginning, and there's Ananda and Dogen and Bodhidharma and all the people you're familiar with. And then you go through these periods, and there's these names, you've never heard of these guys. And so you start wondering, it's like, man, what was this guy about? And then you try and look them up, and they're like details unknown, and, maybe someday they'll find some documentation on these guys. Maybe they won't. But then, your name gets signed to it, and you can't help but think about some guy a couple of 100 years from now, looking back on it and going, who were these guys? And, maybe by then they'll have some kind of super Google, and they'll look us all up, and they'll some poor guy will look at me and go, oh, this guy was really into bugs, but, it's one of the things that really makes it fun. They were people just like us.
Maybe you're Ikkyu reincarnated. He wrote a lot of poetry about bugs.
Oh, there you go.
Mukyo, I was getting ready to call out on my foulness, Sangha. And then Ikuje.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say how moving this was for me, and gives me a lot of comfort. I remember the first, in Falmouth, the first ancestor ceremony that I went to, and it didn't mean that much to me. But now that I've studied some of our ancestors, it means a lot to me. And it just makes me think, we have a member in our Falmouth Sangha who's 90 and who, is in her last days. And this ceremony just has given me so much comfort, because we will always remember her, and just how important it is to remember these people and to and to find out about them has really helped me. It's helping me. Finding out about these ancestors is helping me because I so identify with them. So I just want to thank you very much. Oh, and I do have two questions, but I don't know what Daishan means or the word that we say before the female ancestors. I wondered if you could tell me what they mean. I don't know what those words mean.
Well, Fusatsu is looking at me, so I guess I have to take this one. Dai, I'm sorry, I should have explained that. I didn't want to do too much talking during the ceremony. Dai means great. Osho means authentic. So it means something like great, authentic teacher. Then when you say Butsu Dai Osho, it means a fully awakened one. And that stops with Shakyamuni. And that's a kind of respect as well, what Zenku was talking about. We think all of these ancestors had some great degree of insight, or they wouldn't have lived their lives the way they did. But out of deference to Shakyamuni and the prehistoric Buddhas, they're not called Butsu Daiyosho, they're called Daiyosho. And great teacher. And Acharya means something like nun or monk, and maybe somebody who's more scholarly than I am can explain that a little better.
And do you know how to spell that word?
What is it?
Do you know how to spell that?
Acharya?
Acharya?
Acharya.
And
Thank you.
I'll work with Sensei, Hojo Sensei can make that available digitally.
Yeah.
For we can send this out for everybody to have access to it.
I would just say if anybody wants a copy, just send an email, probably through Fusatsu or myself, and we can send you the electronic version of it, of the chant, and you can do it yourself now that you've heard how it's done. You just establish your own cadence, and it's kind of a natural thing. You find yourself sort of bouncing and chanting. And I also recommend Gary Ferguson's book on Zen's Chinese heritage, which goes through all of the lineage down through China, starting with Bodhidharma and ending with Dogen. And so if you read the text carefully, you can detect, and there's a pull-out chart in the back, at least of the earlier editions, where you can see the lineage, and ours is sort of galvanized looking squares of gray Soto Zen coming all the way down to Dogen. And you can actually study the Soto lineage. He has the Rinzai in there, everybody's in there. But for us, I gave a 12-month course and did 2 to 3 teachers a month, where I just went through the Soto lineage. It's a lot to read, but if you narrow it down to the Soto lineage, you can get a little better grasp of some of these names we chanted today. You will find in there, and you'll hear these anecdotal stories about them. All of them are characters of some sort or another. Some were criminals.
Gasho.
You can say.
I'm Ikusei from the Falmouth Sangha, and I am very, very grateful for this morning's program and opportunity. And it made something, it actually was, it illuminated and made something come to life as if it were the living embodiment of it. And what I'm referring to is the short part of Dogen's vow. Buddhas and ancestors of old were as we in the future shall be Buddhas and ancestors, revering Buddhas and ancestors. We are one Buddha and one ancestor, awakening Bodhi mind. We are one Bodhi mind. Gasho.
That's right. I love that. And I'm gonna do a time check. I know we're 15 minutes over, but this has been such a great conversation. But I would ask our teachers if they would like to each leave us with some thoughts on this Founders Day. We appreciate your words. So if you would please each just leave us some ending thoughts and work on. Sensei Zenku, do you want to go first?
You know, I don't have anything really more to add. I think it's been a really great conversation. I really enjoyed it. And I think this is a tradition that just gets richer over time. So we can do it more than once a month, or once a year, I should say. Some places we do it more like once a month, which I think would be really good. It would be nice to get more familiar with the names so that we can chant it fluidly. There is a little challenge there, I think, that we all experience. So it's certainly one of my, I want to get much more fluid with it myself. And I think with that, it gets richer and richer.
By the way, we have a CD that I produced, and I know computers don't have CD players anymore, I found out, getting a new one, but it's how to chant these various chants we did today. So if anybody wants that, please let us know.
Sensei Sangaku.
I'd just like to say gasho to everyone. Sharing the Dharma is sharing the teaching. And the more we do that, I think the more we experience in our practice what I was referring to as right livelihood. So gasho everyone.
I just wanted to say, Matsuoka Roshi, one of his talks that really struck me had included his diagram 360 degrees Zen. He didn't actually draw a diagram, but he talked about going around the circle in your practice and so forth. And I think because of my design background, that image stuck in my head. So many of you know that I use my design background to do semantic modeling of the teachings and things of that nature. These are attempts to try to help visualize and create mnemonics so that we can kind of grasp this teaching on a supraverbal level and not be limited to the line on the paper, the words on the paper. And one of those that I've done recently is the nesting spheres, the personal in the middle, that's your personal bubble in which you live. And outside of that is the social sphere, and outside of that, the natural sphere, and outside of that, the universal sphere. Some of you heard those lectures, so I'm not going to belabor it. But one of the things that Matsuoka Roshi would often say that I most often quote him on is he would say, don't give up. Don't give up, his Japanese accent. Don't give up. No matter how bad it gets, you always have someplace to go when you do Zazen, he would say. It's not an escape, but it's something that always works. And on that, that's in the personal sphere, the personal realm. You can always sit with very few exceptions. But then on the social level, it's do no harm, the first precept. So if you can have those two simple formulae, try your best to do no harm. It's not easy on the social level, and don't give up on the personal level.
Shinjin Sensei.
Keep practicing.
Again, everyone, thank you so much for joining. I do want to remind you of some upcoming practice opportunities before we do our closing verses. We have some really great opportunities coming up for Rohatsu, and Sensei Sangaku or Mokyo, did you want to speak a little bit about the overnight sit just quickly, or do you just want to, I just want to make sure.
Just very quickly, Friday night, 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, until Saturday the 5th, 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The Falmouth Soto Zen Sangha will sit in Rohatsu. So we'll sit throughout the night. Drop me an email if you'd like to do that. I'll send you the URL and passwords to join us via Zoom.
And if you can't make that one, or if you're really, really vigilant about practice, you want to sit overnight and then join into the next day, Sensei Zenku, would you speak about our offering for the Zazen Kai?
Yes, indeed. On Saturday, this coming, the 5th of December, we're going to have an all-day sit. We are starting, I'm going to speak Mountain Time. We're going to start at 7 and we'll go till 5, which would be 9 to 7 East Coast time, 9 to 7. So it'll be an all-day set. There'll be a Dharma talk in the afternoon, but primarily, we're just inspired by the historical Buddha's Great Awakening. And so anyway, want to kind of dedicate the day to Zazen practice. So please join us. Send me an email, and if you would like to attend, then I'll make sure you get connected with all you need.
Yeah. And then on Sunday, we have Unshin, Bill Mayhew speaking about our delusive minds and natures. So really great practice opportunities coming up through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for an intensive practice right into the holidays. So we welcome you to join any of these activities. And also, please check out our practice offering. We have extensive practice offerings online. And as always, we are so grateful for each and every single one of you. It takes the members, it takes the folks supporting us. So if you're already not a supporting member, please consider doing that. It's greatly appreciated. So without further ado,
That's one thing. We do have 3 members in the room here who have said we're in for the overnight sit. Whether we join Falmouth or not would be a question we would decide amongst us.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you can join via Zoom, just turn the system on if y'all want to it's totally doable.
And we will do the New Year's Eve sit from 7:30 to midnight on the 31st. We'll do that here, and we'll chant the 108 Dharma gates, and we'll ring in the new year with the 108 strikes of the big gong.
Yep. And so the newsletter will be coming out tomorrow. So you'll have all these great opportunities, new books being released, all of the practice opportunities. Again, this is continued lineage and continue supporting the Sangha. So anything else?
You don't go to lineage, to Zen with the lineage you want. You go to Zen with the lineage you got.
All right, so we're good for the. Go ahead, Justin.
You're going to do the closing vows?
Yes.
Numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Illusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.
Have a good day, everybody.
Gasho, everyone be safe, be well.
Nice to see everybody.
Yeah.
Gasho.
Gasho.
Gotcha.
Thank you.